Special counsel Robert Mueller spoke publicly for the first time since the launch of the Russia investigation. Mueller gave a nearly 10-minute statement from the Justice Department Wednesday morning. He did not clear the president of obstructing justice, but he didn't accuse him directly either. Instead, Mueller said indicting Mr. Trump was never an option because he is a sitting president.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. The introduction to the Volume 2 of our report explains that decision. It explains that under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is unconstitutional.
Democrats have been demanding answers since the redacted version of Mueller's report was released last month. The special counsel found the president did not collude with Russia to interfere in the 2016 election, left open the issue of obstruction of justice open-ended. President Trump said Mueller's statement means, quote, nothing changes, adding in a tweet, there was insufficient evidence and therefore, in our country, a person is innocent. The case is closed. Hunter Walker joins me now from Washington. He's a White House correspondent for Yahoo News. All right, Hunter, what a day it has been.
Another slow news day.
Another slow news day. But what stood out to you about this remarkable statement from the special counsel Wednesday?
Well, the first and I think most important thing is that Bob Mueller, in his only public comments about this investigation, not just since he concluded, wanted to make a couple things clear. And I think one of them was that he has not exonerated the president, which is a claim that President Trump and the White House and really even the Attorney General have made repeatedly. And with those words, when Mueller said, you know, if we were confident he was not guilty of a crime, we would have said so, he really blew up that major claim from the White House. And, you know, it's really, this was a report divided into two sections. The question of collusion, if you will, with the Russians, and this question of obstruction. And Trump was really not exonerated on either one, because collusion is not a legal term. The term is conspiracy. And what Mueller did was he established extensive contacts between, you know, members of Trump's inner circle and family with associates of the Russian government. But he said in the report, I could not establish sufficient evidence of conspiracy, which is a very, very high bar. On the question of obstruction, it gets even murkier because he outlined all of these instances of obstruction and, you know, just declined to make a decision on whether or not to charge. And with his comments today, he made clear that decision to not weigh in on that, you know, wasn't based on thinking the president was innocent. It was, in fact, based on longstanding Justice Department policy. The other major takeaway here is that's the exact opposite of what the Deputy Attorney General, the Acting Attorney General, William Barr, seemed to say last month when he held a press conference about the report's release.
Right. Well, let's listen to how House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler responded to this on Wednesday.
As Mueller again highlighted this morning, it falls to Congress to respond to the crimes, lies, and other wrongdoing of President Trump. We will do so. Make no mistake, no one, not even the President of the United States, is above the law.
So the special counsel indicated he has no plans to testify before Congress. And Hunter, I know you wrote about this, quote, Mueller's desire to remain behind the scenes has put Democrats in a complicated position as they ponder their next steps. So what kind of pressure are congressional leaders facing with respect to impeachment?
Well, it's one thing for Nadler, the Judiciary Committee chairman, to say that Democrats are going to do something. But the big question is, what exactly is their move? And you've seen this growing momentum for impeachment. The latest came today where Senator Kamala Harris and Senator Cory Booker, both top presidential candidates, jumped in and said that they support impeachment proceedings in the wake of Mueller's remarks. So the momentum is growing on that. And, you know, in the case of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, you've seen her send mixed messages. I think her team would deny this, but, you know, in March, she basically explicitly said she would not do impeachment and called it, quote unquote, divisive. In her comments today, even though she didn't come out for it and said there would have to be a compelling, ironclad case, she said nothing is off the table. And that's also what Chairman Nadler said. Now, his Judiciary Committee would probably be the venue for the beginning of impeachment proceedings. But, sources I've talked to who support and even expect impeachment occurring have, suggested that Mueller was a key part of that and that this makes it tricky. And what I mean by that is, impeachment is a pretty fast-moving thing. In the case of President Clinton, it only took about 2 months at the end of 1998. And so for strategic reasons, particularly since they would expect the Republican Senate to ultimately defeat impeachment, I think Democrats would want this to occur further in the election cycle and give President Trump less time to recover from what would essentially be an airing of grievances and damning information. So in order to run out the clock and also potentially drum up support from Republicans and the public, what they would want to do is have a series of, almost preliminary testimony in most likely the Judiciary Committee, laying the groundwork and making sort of that compelling case that Pelosi alluded to. Mueller would obviously be the most likely, most interesting and crucial witness there. One source I spoke to said they want to create a quote-unquote visual representation of his report. And how do you do that without him? Obviously they could still compel him, but what was really interesting in Nadler's remarks, he basically dodged the question. When he was asked, would you subpoena Mueller, he initially didn't answer it, and then after a long pause, when he was asked a second time, said, I think Mueller said all he has to say today, or told us what we need.
I mean, what does that suggest to you then, Hunter?
It suggests to me that, Nadler and Pelosi are essentially in the driver's seat here. Mm-hmm. They're facing pressure from, namely the progressive wing and others who support impeachment. And amid this pressure, I'm not sure they know exactly what they're going to do. And not only is this a question about, what happens for President Trump, but keep in mind that, Speaker Pelosi is someone who's had a lot of people eye her job over the years. And I think that, this is going to emerge as a key challenge for Democratic House leadership.
So at the White House, this is what Press Secretary Sarah Sanders had to say, quote, after 2 years, the special counsel is moving on with his life, and everyone else should do the same. With what you just laid out, though, there's clearly not going to be any kind of moving on from this, for Democrats at least. So what can we expect to see from the White House moving forward?
Well, one thing that was amazing about Sarah Sanders' statement is she engaged in a crucial bit of verbal gymnastics where, she had a break in her comments where, she was noting that Mueller found no evidence of collusion, but then said it was the Attorney General who said there was no obstruction, because that's a thing that Mueller has never said. Mm-hmm. So I think one thing we're going to continue to see from the White House is they will keep overstating how much Bob Mueller's investigation, quote unquote, exonerated the president, when, as we said earlier, it did no such thing. And, I've talked to senior leadership of the Trump campaign. They are very, very confident about the position they're in heading into the election. They're raising a ton of money. He has exponentially more resources behind him than he did this time 4 years ago, when it was essentially him and a couple of business allies, working out of his skyscraper in Manhattan. And, they view the Mueller probe as a win for them. They think they can focus on this idea that the Democrats engaged in a partisan, quote unquote, witch hunt and score points with voters.
Meanwhile, Hunter, the Democratic National Committee announced Wednesday stricter rules to make the third debate stage in the fall. Candidates now must earn at least 2% support in 4 party-approved polls, as well as at least 130,000 donors. Which candidates can we expect this to impact the most?
Well, as of now, we have over 20 top candidates that are vying for the Democratic nomination. And while it's not exactly clear how to define the top tier, I think these rules as of now would let about 8 candidates into the debate, which is still a pretty big field. That obviously leaves out over, 10 or 15 who just would not make it. And I think the biggest name on that list right now is Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is someone who came into the race. She's a senator from New York. She had pretty high expectations, and she is just nowhere in the polls right now. Even as we've seen people, most notably Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and Amy Klobuchar do much better than they were expected to. So, she's a formerly leading candidate who seems to be dropping off the map by those restrictions. And then, of course, there are the people who, I think there are legitimate questions about whether even they think they can win. Your Eric Swalwells, your Bill de Blasio's, your Steve Bullocks, who, just don't have much organization behind them. They're nowhere in the polls, and it looks like they won't even make it to the third debate stage.
Yeah, I imagine there are a lot of campaigns sitting down right now and poring over these rules, trying to strategize even as we speak. All right, Hunter Walker in Washington for us. Hunter, thank you.
Thank you.